Alison.
Hi, everyone.
Alyson McDonald. I'm going to give you a little intro on Alison and the work that she does, and then I'll hand you over. The talk will be roughly about an hour long, and Alison's got a lot of experience doing this, and she's run this workshop privately, in-person workshop to her private clients and things. So it's going to be really fantastic, and I'm really excited to hear Alison's wisdom with regards to relationship building tonight. So so let's get cracking. So hi everyone, it's Alina here from Holistic Healthcare. Tonight we're going to be talking about mindset and relationship, and we have Alyson McDonald with us. Alyson is a health coach, but she's also got expertise in mindset and relationship coaching. Ali's practice focuses on personal growth, cultivating an expert mindset in areas of happiness, ambition, confidence, resilience, connection, and authenticity. And I know, Alison, you work largely with women, but I'm sure, I mean, we've got some men. Hi, Derek. Yeah. We've got some lovely guys on the call tonight, and I don't think this is just for women, isn't it? I mean, it really is for everybody. But yeah, I'll pass it over to you now, Alison.
I'm so excited. Hello, everyone. So yes, for the men here, the men watching the replay, I've worked with men before. I've done this presentation and similar presentations with men. So this is really something we can all use to better our relationships with others and with ourselves. Whether you're in a romantic relationship right now or not, these are the skills you can start practicing right now. So even when you do get in that relationship, you at least have a good foundation. So let me share this with everybody, and we'll get started. So my presentation is about the psychology of a healthy relationship. I'm going to show you how to create the next level you so you can have your next level relationship. And what that really means is we have to do the inner work before we can expect to have a good relationship. Sometimes we just say, I want that partner, or I want that amazing marriage, but we forget that first we have to focus on ourselves and how we can show up as a better person to make that happen. So why do you need to hear this? Why is this presentation important? Because if you don't acknowledge and work through your own destructive patterns, you will continue to repeat and relive their consequences, because they can be very sneaky. They can live in the subconscious mind. And in the end, it's really going to mess you up. And maybe it already has. We've all been there. But if we want to take control back in our relationships, it really starts with figuring out what are my patterns and how are they getting in the way and how can I change them? So before I get started on that, I'll give you a little background on me and my story. One, before I share, let's make sure I can bring people in. Oh, hold on. I think I have someone in the waiting room. It gets a little hard to work on the waiting room while I'm doing the presentation. So maybe if I hold it on the side, this will work. Let's try this. Okay, sorry everybody. So before I get started on my personal story, I'm a dating and mindset coach. I've been doing this work for over a year now. I have my background with a degree in psychology, and I used to do health coaching prior. So I have a whole wider range of things, but I've always focused on mindset as my core principle in all coaching I do, because everything starts in the mind. And once we work through everything going on in our mind, everything in our external world, including relationships, become a lot easier. So my personal story is I came from a very codependent relationship in my past. I was in a relationship for over 5 years, and I really wanted more for him and his success than he wanted it for himself. I always gave too much, pushed too much, and it really took away from me focusing on myself. There was a lot of alcohol abuse on his part. He didn't work for several years, played video games all the time while I was in school, getting my degree, working on my business, and it became very frustrating, because I knew inside that he wasn't the person that I should be with, but I made excuses. He was my best friend. He was so sweet to me. We had just, in a lot of ways, we had a beautiful relationship and a beautiful connection. But in the end, the romantic connection wasn't enough to hold it, because he wasn't healthy in his mind. So I was becoming codependent, trying to save him from himself. And I just felt like it was too hard to end it. And how it actually ended was, over those years, suddenly he developed paranoid schizophrenia, which if anybody's ever heard of it, I'm sure most of you haven't seen it. It's very, very rare, but he kind of became a different person. So I saw this as God or the universe or what you believe your higher power is kind of pulling him out of my life. And it was very hard. It was very devastating. I had to start over completely when I was 25. And really decide who do I want to be and how do I want my relationships to go. And even following that breakup and that heartbreak, I still saw my value and importance as a person in fixing other people. So I ended up with a lot of men who were broken, a lot of men who still needed to work on themselves and had bad anxiety and or depression and all these things, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's completely normal. But they were men who weren't working on it. They weren't men who were fixing it and trying to be better versions of themselves. So I started to attract the same kind of person. So once this continued to happen over the years, I realized I was part of the problem because this pattern kept happening to me. I saw that I was the common denominator. I was the one showing up in all of these relationships. I was the one saying, this is acceptable behavior. I will continue to date people like this. So then I had to choose to grow into the person I wanted to be. And I had to make some changes in myself, including the type of men that I dated. So if anybody relates to any of this, maybe you've been in a relationship that was codependent, or you knew you shouldn't be with somebody, but you stood around anyways, or maybe you've been a fixer, put it in the chat and just say, yes, I've done that, or yes, me too. Just want to see if anybody relates to my story before we continue on, because I know most of the things that I'm going to share, we all have our own version of our stories, but at the same time, they can be very, very similar. So if you relate to this, just put in the chat that you've been there or had something similar happen. Also, let's talk about what codependency is. So maybe you've never heard of codependency until right now. It gets very sneaky. It's when two people depend on each other for, let's say usually it's emotional. We depend on each other for emotional safety or maybe financial safety and things like that. It's a very unhealthy dynamic. How do you know that it's happening? So if your relationship feels like an uphill battle, you're always fighting. It feels like a struggle to keep it healthy and to keep things moving along. Having a conversation with your partner feels like pulling teeth. Maybe it feels more like a parent and child relationship versus romantic partners. I know I had this experience before where I felt like the mom and he was my child and I was trying to push too much. It could feel like walking on eggshells. You're afraid to speak up and you're lacking authenticity. It's hard to be yourself. You become more focused on them than focused on you. And you're more focused on their growth than they are. You want better for them than they want for themselves, and unresolved issues keep arising. So when these things start to happen, we see common defense mechanisms to keep us safe. We start using them. They're very unconscious. We don't realize we do them, but it's just natural human behavior, natural human psychology. So there are about 1 million examples of defense mechanisms that we use when we're feeling upset, when we're angry, when we're anxious, when we're sad, when we're experiencing jealousy, when any negative emotions come up. And while it's human and it's natural, it's still important to learn these things and learn where our weaknesses are so they don't continue to get in our way. So I'm only going to talk about a few here because there's so many examples, but one of them is projection. So projection is when we displace our emotions onto another person. So let's say I'm feeling really jealous of my partner because they have a coworker of the opposite sex and they spend all of their time with them at work, and I'm feeling jealous. So instead of admitting that I'm jealous, when my partner comes home, I may ask him, why are you so jealous? Why do you get so jealous when my friend of the opposite sex messages me? Your partner's like, I'm not jealous. Where is this coming from? That's called projection. When you actually know that they're not experiencing that, but you are, and you're just not admitting it. Or maybe you're feeling anger towards your partner. You're upset about something, but you haven't talked about it yet. So when your partner comes home, you say, why are you in such a bad mood? When maybe they're not in a bad mood, but you are. You're projecting it onto them. Think of it just like a projector screen. I'm taking it out of me and putting it on you instead of dealing with my emotions and how I'm feeling in a healthy way. There's also repression, which you've heard a lot about, when we push down unwanted emotions. And I want to add to this. So repression is unconscious. We don't realize we're doing it. We're avoiding it. There's also suppression, where we're doing it by choice. We're saying, I don't want to deal with this. This is too much for me, whether it's too many emotions, thoughts, or experiences and memories. We just push it away, don't want to deal with it. But in time, that leads to an explosion because you can only repress and suppress something for so long. So another example would be displacement, which we've all done this and we've all seen it. When you transfer your negative feelings from to something else. So you had a bad day at work, you come home and yell at your spouse, or you're really upset with a bill you got in the mail, an unexpected bill, so you take it out on your partner. It has nothing to do with them, but they're the target because it's less threatening, it's easier for you, so you put it out on them. We also have dissociation, which is a really extreme form of defense mechanisms because we start to feel disconnected with reality. Our relationship feels too painful. It feels like something we really don't want to be in. It's so unhealthy that you disconnect and you almost become robotic. And that we know how unhealthy that is. And it usually takes time to get there. But it's about catching it before that happens. And maybe you're there in a relationship right now. It's time to really own that and figure out, why am I dissociating from my reality and how can I fix reality so I don't have to escape it? And then we have denial. We all know what denial is, and playing the victim, when everything is your partner's problem, everything is your spouse's problem, and not admitting, I have some work I could do as well. And then I have other examples in the corner of more cognitive distortions and things that get in our way, just so you can kind of check those out and maybe look into them and see if you relate to them. Because again, we've all done them. We've all done each and every one of them, but it's, why do I do them? How often do I do them? Can I catch myself before I make that mistake again? So this is something just for you to think about. How have you shown up in the past in relationships, or how are you showing up in your current relationship? Because if you've shown up in these ways, you can expect to continue to do them in the future unless something changes. So if you've shown up frustrated, you miscommunicate, relentless arguing, there's jealousy and heartbreak, that's not really a relationship. That's not a healthy relationship. So it's not even worth calling it a relationship. It's just two people spending their time together. So how can we build healthy relationships? And again, if you're in a relationship or married, you can start making these changes now. If you're currently single, I typically work with people who are single and they're dating and they want healthier relationships moving forward. So either one of them works. So no matter where you're at, this is stuff you can implement either right now or in the future. And you can also practice with friends and family. You don't need a romantic relationship for this to work. Everything you're learning today, you can use in your friend relationships, your work relationships, and family relationships as well. So if this is how you showed up in the past, let's talk about how you can show up in the future. We need to show up connected. We need to see through the eyes of love, because that's seeing clearly. We need to show up with healthy communication and healthy boundaries. And we need to feel and give peace and security, because that just feels confident. It gives the other person confidence and it makes life so much easier. So how do we do this though? A lot of it feels very complicated, especially if we've been doing this our whole lives. How do we stop falling into these patterns? Which means, how do we stop experiencing cognitive dissonance? And if you don't know what cognitive dissonance is, it's a psychological term to describe when we say we want to be this person over here, person A, but we really are being person B. We say we want to be happy and patient and loving in our relationship, but in reality, we're frustrated, we get jealous, and we get irritated. The farther away these two people are, which they're both you, the imagined you, the ideal you, and the real you, the more cognitive dissonance we experience, where we feel frustrated with ourselves. We resent ourselves. We're mad at ourselves because we know we have the potential to be this person, but we're all the way over here. The goal of this presentation is to help you move these two things closer together so you become who you know you're capable of being, and you reach that full potential in yourself and in your relationships. So the way to do that is focus on yourself. We can't focus on our partners if we want to be better ourselves. We have to first focus on our pain, because that is the way to self-care. Self-care is more than a bubble bath. It's more than getting your nails done. It's more than going to the gym. Those are all important, but it's really to focus on the deep inner work. Once we do that, it makes lasting changes versus a temporary Band-Aid. So the first one is, we need to stop ignoring what hurts, because the pain that you experience, you can't go over it, you can't go under it, you can't go around it. The only way to heal it is to move right through it, to say, this is bothering me, this hurts me, what can we do to fix it? And you may have to start doing this within yourself. Maybe it's a past childhood trauma that you haven't worked with. That's something to deal with. So you're not treating your spouse the way you saw your parents treat each other if it wasn't healthy. You start dealing with it even though it sucks, because that's one of the things. We don't want to deal with the pain that's going to come up, so we just push it down. And what we do when that happens is, again, going back to the repression and the suppression, if we're just saying, this doesn't bother me, it doesn't bother me, or maybe you know your partner, there's some things that have been upsetting you about your partner and they haven't been acknowledged, they haven't been worked on, but you don't want to make a big deal, you don't want to seem needy or naggy, so you push it down. When you're repressing and suppressing it, it actually just creates triggers. So I'm sure we've all heard of being triggered. it's almost become a trendy word. It's kind of funny to say, oh, I got triggered today, or, oh, he got triggered. But what really is a trigger? A trigger is a repressed trauma. It's something that we haven't dealt with. And the way I see it is like a jack in the box. And I don't remember if I go over this in another slide. If not, I'll go through it now. But a jack in the box, like the old-fashioned toys like you see on my screen, you wind them down and wind them down and wind them down until eventually it can't wind anymore and it explodes because there's too much tension. It's the same with our emotions. It's the same with our experiences that we push down. You can only ignore it for so long until it pops back up and it looks you right in the face and says, we need to deal with this. So if you've been upset with your partner for months now and you haven't said anything because you don't want to seem needy and naggy, but it keeps bothering you, and it keeps bothering you, and it keeps bothering you. One day, your partner's going to come home, and you're just going to scream at them, and they're going to have no idea what you're talking about. And I'm sure this has happened to you before. They have no idea what you're talking about. Like, what are you even upset about? I didn't even know you were upset all this time. That is what repression is. That's what suppression is. It's when we are triggered by something that we chose to ignore for too long. But if you want to stop doing this and have healthy relationships, you have to first acknowledge there's nothing wrong with feeling. There's nothing wrong with emotions. You're just being human. You have to allow yourself to be human because your pain has the potential to be your evolution and your transformation. Your pain doesn't have to be a bad thing. You have to allow it to be something that helps you evolve and transform into the next version of yourself. An example of suppression that we've all done, and maybe you did it today, maybe you did it yesterday, is saying I'm fine when you're not really fine. When your partner says, how are you today? I'm okay. But there's really something on your mind that you're trying to ignore. That's suppression, and that's what leads to the triggers. Number 2 is give yourself the gift of self-mastery. If you know yourself and have really good self-awareness and you know why you feel how you feel, you know what your triggers are, you know what upsets you, you know what makes you happy, you know how to feel better, then your relationships are so much easier. If you know yourself better than anybody and you've mastered yourself, you have done better than 99% of humans on this planet. Most people never try to master themselves simply because it's too hard to look within. It's too hard to do the work. It's not really too hard, but that's the story most people have created. But this is the best gift I've ever given to myself, and this is the best gift you can give to yourself as well. So some ways to start doing this process is to know your triggers. You have to know ahead of time what typically upsets me in my relationships with my spouse, what typically upsets me in my relationship with my mother or my brother or my boss or my friends. Know what upsets you so you can figure out how to beat it to the punch. So instead of being triggered by that, you can start to work through it. You shouldn't be triggered by anything. And that only means you haven't dealt with some level of trauma. If you haven't dealt with the trauma, you're going to be triggered. Deal with the trauma first and you won't be so triggered. You won't have to walk on eggshells to be happy. You have to work through your childhood and past relationships for this. Most triggers come from that. They come from childhood. Doesn't matter how old you are. I have one of my clients, she's in her 70s. She still has severe childhood trauma that we're working through because it doesn't matter how old you are. It sticks in your subconscious mind and past relationships as well. They can really harbor a lot of resentment and fears and trust issues and things like that. Also, give yourself space. I mean, mental, physical, emotional space. If you're always around people, you can't get to know yourself because you're going to hear their opinions. You're going to hear their thoughts. You're going to be in their energy. And this also goes with social media. Maybe you spend a lot of time by yourself, especially if you are doing some quarantine, maybe you're social distancing. Even if you have space physically, you may not be giving yourself space mentally and emotionally. If you are always on social media, scrolling through Facebook, scrolling through Instagram, maybe you're always working and talking to other people, maybe you're always texting or you're on the phone, you're not actually giving yourself space by yourself to get to know each other or to get to know yourself because you're always with other people, even if not in the physical sense. You need space to get to know yourself where you're journaling, where you're meditating, where you're walking by yourself and just tuning in rather than avoiding it. When you start to do this, you get to ask yourself amazing questions. And I want you to think about this right now because this to me is always so exciting. I do this with all of my clients right when we get started. You got to ask yourself, who do I want to be moving forward? Who is the new version of me? Who is the next level version of me? Think of, like, for me, who's Allie 2.0? What does the upgraded Allie look like? And how can I start becoming her? Ask yourself questions like, who is the new me? What does she or he do? What does he or she wear? What do I speak like? What do I think like? How do I feel? And what does my day look like? What are the different habits that I implement? How do I show up different in my life? And then figure out, how do I start becoming that version of me right now? You don't have to wait until all the ducks are in a row and the stars are aligned. You can make these changes immediately once you stop making the excuses for yourself that say, I'm not ready, or this is too hard, I don't have the time for it. You make time for whatever's important to you. So if you want to be a better version of yourself, then you have to say, this is as much of a priority to me as my physical health is. My mental health is just as much of a priority to me as my work is, as my finances are, as my children are. This needs to be just as important to you. And start making the little changes, even if you think, well, the next version of me, maybe she wears jeans more often than she wears sweats, which I don't agree with that. I wear sweats when I work at home all the time. But maybe when you think about it, it's like, I wear jeans more. It could be the smallest things like that. Then you start wearing jeans. Or maybe you see their day looks different. When you think about the next version of yourself, it's like, I read books. I haven't picked up a book in months. And then you realize, when you imagine the new you read more books. That's not hard to implement now. You don't need to be a millionaire. You don't need to have perfect health or a perfect relationship to start implementing that new habit, but you can start practicing reading books. Maybe you saw yourself as more patient. So you can start implementing that today. How can I practice being more patient? The little things that make a difference over time. You don't need to wait to have a big change for things to happen. They all come from small incremental choices. The third one is building confidence. Healthy relationships come when we feel confident within ourselves and we know ourselves. But how do we build confidence? If you struggle with insecurity, like a lot of my clients do, and like I used to as well, it can feel very daunting. You think, I'm either born with it or I'm born without it. Some people have it, some people don't. That's not true at all. Confidence is a skill. Confidence is something we practice. It's not something you're born with or without. It's something you can cultivate no matter how long it's been that you haven't felt confident in yourself. And maybe you're confident in some areas, maybe in work you're confident, but in relationships you're not. Think about, where can I grow my confidence? And we're going to focus on that right now. So we can do that by doing hard things and sticking to them. Think about it like this. If you live an easy life, and easy is relevant to you, easy for you means I'm not pushing myself. I'm not challenging myself. I'm not making myself do better, then our confidence naturally weakens, because we don't have anything to feel confident about. We don't have, the way I see it is having a reservoir of things. When you're feeling insecure and you don't have a backup assortment of experiences to say, well, I have a lot to be confident about. I pushed myself to read 5 books this month. I pushed myself at work and sold more than I ever have. I've worked out more when I never used to do that. I've been eating healthier than I ever have, and that's really been a challenge for me. And I'm even learning a new language. You don't have to learn a new language, but my point is, you have to do things that are hard for you. If healthy eating has been a challenge for you and you've grown up eating McDonald's and pizza all the time, that could be a hard thing for you. But you have to stick with it. When you do that, then when you're feeling insecure, you get to look back and say, wait, I have a lot to feel really good about. I pushed myself. I challenged myself. Next is creating boundaries and sticking to them. This is really important. Creating boundaries in your romantic relationships, in work and friends, with clients, whoever. If you are a doormat to people and you let them walk all over you, or you don't speak up for yourself, you don't say your opinion, you're not honest with yourself and with other people, then you're going to weaken that confidence again, because your subconscious mind's like, what do I have to be confident about? I let people walk all over me. I never speak up. I don't stay true to myself. I put up boundaries and I let people cross them. Start seeing, where do I let people cross my boundaries, and how can I start sticking to them better? Next one is, should you fake it till you make it? There's some people say yes, some people say no. I say yes. In this area, 100%. Fake confidence until you make it, because it's not actually faking. Faking is, I'd say, a bad word for this. What you're doing is you're embodying it. You're practicing who you want to become. If you want to be more confident, you don't wait till you're more confident. You have to practice it first. It's just like if you wanted to be a great basketball player. You don't just wait till you're a great basketball player. You have to practice. You have to embody being a basketball player. What does a basketball player do? They show up. They dribble the ball. They throw it. They do all those things to make them a good basketball player. It's the same with confidence. You have to embody being confident. How would a confident person show up? How would they show up at work? How would they show up in relationships? How would they show up in family? How would they show up on social media even? How do I show up in this presentation if I'm confident? That's not being fake. It's saying this is a person I want to become, so I'm going to practice it now, even if it feels uncomfortable. And over time, it will become who you really are. That's what happened to me. I faked it till I made it, and then eventually I became that person. There's really not much else I did to become confident. Examples that I always use are job interviews and first dates. So if you have a job interview or you go on a first date and you're nervous as hell, do you walk in going, oh my God, I'm so nervous. I don't think you should pick me for this job. I really don't think I'm good enough. Oh my God. And for the first date, do you walk in nervous saying, you really don't want to go out with me. I'm so nervous. You really don't want to be with me. You should probably call somebody else. I'm going to go home. No, you don't do that. You're nervous, but you show your best self. You show up and pretend you're confident so you can get the job, so you can have a great date. You're nervous inside, but you embody confidence so you have the best chances of being successful in that situation. It's the same with every other area of your life. You have to embody it to have better results. The fourth one, and I don't want to go too deep into this one because this can be a little maybe psychology heavy. Unless you guys really want me to, you can put in the chat if you really want me to, but I'll try to keep it as clear as I can. So mastering CBT techniques to master yourself. So if you haven't heard of CBT, it's cognitive behavior therapy, which are really ways to rewire your thoughts and your beliefs so you can master yourself in your life. So one of the ways we could do that is by unraveling cognitive distortions. And cognitive distortions are exactly as they sound. They are distortions of our thoughts. They are thoughts that we believe are real, but they're really just crazy and we made them up and we believe them for no reason. And you may think, oh, I don't do that. Yes, you do. You do it all day. We all do. If you get a call from your boss and he's like, hey, can you call me back in the next half hour? And you start to get nervous thinking you're going to get fired or you're going to get in trouble for something or you did something wrong, that's a cognitive distortion. You have no proof that you're going to get in trouble, but your mind starts racing and putting together all these pieces, working you up for the possibility. That's still a cognitive distortion. It's not true. There's so many instances where we do that almost every day, if not multiple times a day. So we need to start practicing how do we unravel these so we don't wrap it up and get into a snowball, because our thoughts are like little snowballs. Think of like a little snowflake. Starts out as a baby little snowflake, an innocent little thought. And then if we don't control that snowflake and stomp it out, it grows. And think of it going down a hill. What happens when a little snowflake and snowball goes down a hill? It gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it goes faster and faster and faster. Your thoughts are the same. We've all been there, where it starts out as one nervous thought, one anxious thought, or one fearful thought, one angry thought. And then if you don't control it, it gets bigger and stronger and it goes faster and your mind's racing. And at that point, it's hard to stop it. It's hard to stop feeling anxious. It's hard to stop feeling angry. It's hard to stop feeling sad because you already let the ball go. So we're going to figure out how can we unravel these before they get too big, and how can we unravel them if they still get big and we forgot to control it. So one example of a way you can unravel a cognitive distortion when you're stuck in one is something called playing the script till the end. This is an imagination exercise where you're proving yourself wrong. Sometimes we have these stories made up in our head with no proof. So you have to play out the story. So here's an example in dating. So let's say you're afraid of rejection on a first date. How can we play that script out before we go on the date so we're not so nervous? So let's break it down. First, we walk in. Was I nervous? Nope. Okay, good. Then the second thing, is it having a conversation? Where in the conversation are you imagining the rejection? Sometimes we get nervous saying, oh, I'm afraid of first dates because I don't want to be rejected. Well, where in the date do you imagine you're going to get rejected? Is it when you walk in and they see you? Are you insecure about your physical appearance? Is it when they look at your shoes? Are you insecure about the size of your feet or your shoes? Is it in conversation? Most of the time it is. So what part of the conversation does the insecurity come up? Is it when they ask about work? Is it when they ask about religion? Is it when they ask about your hobbies? Is it when they ask about if you have kids or not? Is it when they ask what you're looking for? Where do you feel like the rejection is going to come up? Once you at least acknowledge that, then I'm not just afraid of being rejected. I'm afraid of being rejected because of this thing about me. I'm afraid of being rejected because I think when I tell them I'm looking for a relationship, it's going to scare them off. That helps you at least narrow down your insecurity so you can work through that. And then following that, you're going to play out your worst case scenario that you're afraid of. If you at least practice the worst case scenario, what do you think is going to happen? Like really on a first date when you get nervous, what do you think is going to happen? You think they're going to pretend to go to the bathroom and then really leave and never come back? Is it that they're going to make you pay for the whole bill and that you can't afford that, or you feel like it's too much for you? Is it you think that they're going to yell at you at the table and insult you? Is it that you think they're going to laugh at you when you tell them what kind of work you do? Is it you think that on the way out, they're going to rush out the door and not want to see you again and not ask for a second date? Really think about, what is your personal worst case scenario? What are you afraid of? Not what is everyone else afraid of? What are you afraid of? And once you at least practice it in your head, then you can kind of ease yourself through it. It's not so bad. Okay, even if they sneak out of the bathroom, will I be okay? Practice doing that and then realizing chances of that happening are actually really low, and just work with the thoughts versus fighting against them. Another thing you can try is what's called exposure and response prevention technique. So for example, let's say you have anxiety that naturally arises from thinking about being rejected, when in fact, it's really just a conditioned response. Maybe every time you think about a date, your brain automatically says, I'm going to be rejected. All that is conditioning. Your brain is wired that way. It has two things connecting themselves together that says, when I think of date, I think of rejection. I think of date, I think rejection. And every time you do that, the grooves in your brain go deeper and deeper and deeper. And it doesn't mean it's true. It just means you've had this thought go on so many times that your brain now thinks it's a fact when it's not. So we have to start to decondition the mind by having a different automatic thought that's going to have to be forced at first. So when I think of first date, I think of it's going to be fun. Or when I think of first date, I think of dinner. You can make any new response to that first thought that you want, and that'll decondition you from the anxiety. Another one is called cognitive restructuring. So often we let our thoughts stay past expiration dates. Instead of just letting a thought be fleeting and say, oh, I'm worried that my health isn't going to get better, and then just letting the thought go, you work yourself up and you keep telling yourself, oh, my health is never going to get better. I remember when this happened to my parents, and then this happened, and then they got sick, and oh my gosh, and then the last time this happened, and then it keeps going. Instead of allowing yourself to do that, we can restructure it. Instead of thinking of health as something scary and daunting and impossible, we can restructure it and think of empowering, and I have choices, and I can make changes. And it's the same with rejection in relationships. How else can we think about rejection? Well, rejection could be divine intervention, guiding me to the right person that I'm actually meant to be with. Rejection can be an opportunity for me to learn more about myself. And a rejection can be an opportunity for me to practice self-love. These are all ways to restructure a past belief and make it something that serves you rather than hinders you. The fifth one, I believe this is the last one, is letting go of the past, which most people really struggle with. You have to ask yourself right now, is the new me supposed to hold on to these things? Probably not. The things that are coming up for you as I give this presentation, it's time for you to let them go, and part of you knows that, but it feels almost impossible. It's not. Think about what material, mental, and emotional things you can get rid of. And I add material in here because it's so helpful. Think of spring cleaning. If you've ever done spring cleaning, or maybe when you're moving, you clear out some stuff, you get rid of some clothes, and you get rid of just old knickknacks that you didn't want, and you clear out your cabinets and clear out your pantry. And how good does that feel? It feels amazing. It feels like a reset. You feel refreshed. You feel like, it just feels like a relief. Getting rid of material things is such a big help, even when you're doing changes in psychology with relationships, because it helps your brain feel like a reset. So I always tell my clients, start with material, start with going through all the things that you no longer need, that no longer serve you, and then start working through the mental and emotional things that we can let go of. Because you have to realize that these things that you've been holding on to for so long that you feel attached to, it's the past you. You want to be upgraded. You want to be the upgraded you. You want to be the best version of you. The only way you can do that is to get rid of the baggage, because think of it like a backpack of rocks. And along the time that you've been alive, you've put one rock in every problem you've ever had. You put a rock in each time you have a problem. Each time somebody hurts you, each time somebody insults you, each time somebody gives you a hard time, each time you've been stressed, each time you've been angry. And over time, you just keep adding these rocks to your backpack. And what happens when you add more rocks, it gets too heavy, and you start to weaken, you start to fall down, because they're dragging you down literally. It's the same thing with our mental and emotional baggage. The rocks get too heavy if we're not letting some of them go, because life is going to be hard. We're going to have more hardships. We all will. We're going to have more stressors. They're all going to come in. That's what life is. But if you're not taking some out along the way, it's going to weigh you down. And you have to practice, how can I let go of some of this baggage so I can have a better future? And like I said, clear out your physical space first. Go through all the rooms in your house. Go through your car. Go through your phone. Get rid of things that hold you back. It makes the rest of it a lot easier. Have a clear vision. Where do I want to go? What do I want my relationship to look like? How do I want to feel? What does my new life look like? And start following that vision. And create some affirmations that serve you in this next version of yourself, because your mind is already implanting subconscious beliefs on a repeat loop. But what impact are these thoughts having? So let's say that you're constantly thinking, I'm not worthy. I had a client yesterday who really struggles with this. So maybe some of you do as well. She believes, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. Actually, I had another client this morning who felt the same way. She says, I'm not valuable unless I'm productive. I'm sure we've all been there, right? Where you feel like I only have value if I'm constantly productive. These thoughts are just on a repeat loop. Those are affirmations. They're negative affirmations that you don't want. They're making your life worse. They're making you feel miserable, but you're still allowing them to continue. So how instead can you create positive affirmations? Because you have to decide to improve the quality of your thoughts. It doesn't happen on its own. That's not the way the brain works. You have to choose, I'm going to have different thoughts. I'm going to decide I am worthy no matter what. I don't have to be productive to be valuable. I'm valuable just as I am. You have to practice changing those thoughts and creating a new repeat loop of thoughts, because your brain repeats the same thoughts every day. They've done studies that show we have about, no one knows for sure, but 60 to 80,000 thoughts per day. About 70%, and again, nobody knows the exact percentage, but let's say 70% of those thoughts were the same ones you had yesterday and the same ones the day before. So you're just recycling your thoughts every single day. So all you're doing, tens of thousands of the same thoughts. But are they the thoughts that are serving you and the life that you want and the relationship you want? If not, you have to empower yourself and decide, I'm going to think different. I'm going to work on this because this is important to me. And then you have to take action. It's not enough for me to sit here and teach you all these things and for you to be like, oh my gosh, I never thought of that before. Oh my gosh, that was so great. I can't believe I never realized that. Oh, I got to do that. Oh my gosh, that's great. I'm glad I've taught you things. I'm glad this has helped you and you've had some epiphanies and breakthroughs. But it only does so much if you just listen. Then we end this presentation, you go about your day and you go back to the same way you used to think and live. You have to choose to take action. You have to choose right now, I'm going to work on becoming a better version of myself. I'm going to work on changing my thoughts. I'm going to work on being more patient. I'm going to work on being the next best version of me, because I know that's what I really desire. The action is the most important thing, because thoughts without action are almost meaningless. Or I don't want to say thoughts without action, knowledge without action is almost meaningless. Oh God, we do have another one. Okay, I'll keep this one short, you guys. So learning, is this the last one? Yeah, so last one is learning communication skills, because if you don't have communication, you don't have a relationship. So healthy communication means calm and collected tone without judgment or condemnation, being honest, comforting, and a mutual feeling of safety between the both of you, picking your battles rather than fighting over everything, having resolution on both sides. So when you both leave a discussion or an argument or a conversation, you both feel like it was resolved. Unhealthy communication, on the other hand, is obviously a raised voice, condescending tone, attacking, taking things personal, or making it personal to them, being passive aggressive, saying I'm okay when you're not okay, avoidance, instead of acknowledging the issue, you're avoiding it, using language like always and never, because it's overgeneralizing, like you always ignore me. Well, do they? Do they always every single time you talk? Probably not. Or you never listen? Never? Never's a strong word. That language is very unhealthy, and it actually makes the other person you're speaking to not listen to you. Because now instead of listening to what you're saying, they're on the defense mode, where they say, no, I do listen to you. Do you remember yesterday I said I listened to you for 30 minutes? Now instead of hearing what your point was, now they're defending themselves. So you're actually just digging yourself into a deeper hole by using this language. Don't waste your time doing it. Being right versus being kind and loving. Kind and loving in relationships should always come before being right. And it ends with one winner or no winners. One of you walks away still upset or still hurt or still angry, or both of you walk away. Nothing is resolved. So to get better at communication, you have to know yourself first. Communication first comes within. So you need to know, number one, what do I need? 2 is why do I need it? And 3 is what does it look like? Most people barely get as far as 1, We just expect people to read our minds, especially if you've been with somebody for a long time. But you have to clearly state what you need. Most people, though, even if you do that, you stop there. You also need to be able to explain why you need it. Your people that you're speaking to need to know why is this valuable to you? And then the third that almost nobody does is, what does that look like? How can I help you specifically? So, for example, if you're telling your partner, or maybe you're just getting frustrated with them because you don't spend enough time together and they're always busy at work and distracted on their phone and they're always watching TV and paying attention to sports and not you. Instead of getting frustrated, start with saying, I need more quality time. There's one. That's step one. What do I need? Step two, though, that we need to add to is, why do I need it? You need to say why this is important to me. I need quality time because when I lack it, I feel like I'm losing my connection with you. For me to feel like our relationship is strong and for me to feel as loving and patient as I can be, I need to have more time with you. Now I explain my value. Now they're more likely to listen and to take action on it. And three, what does that look like? Quality time for me is different than quality time for you and your partner and your friend and your other friend. Everyone has a different definition, so you need to be very specific. Quality time for me is an hour every night where we don't have our phones, we have no technology, no TV, and we sit and listen and talk to each other. But maybe quality time for you is, it can include watching a movie at night, just laying together and watching a movie. Maybe quality time means we get out of the house and we get a babysitter and we go on a date. You have to define what that is. You have to know it within yourself first and then be able to express it, because they may say, I've been giving you quality time. We watched a movie all week. But for you, that's not quality time. Quality time means you get out of the house and you go on a date. You have to be specific and you have to work through your own traumas and triggers, because your partner can try to give you everything that you're asking for. But if you haven't worked through your own stuff yet, it's going to be hard for you to acknowledge and appreciate it. And it's going to be really hard for you to feel happy. You also have to manage your emotions and compartmentalize when you need it. So if you had a really bad day at work, compartmentalize it. Sometimes you don't have to come home from work stressed and grumpy and take it out on your partner. Learn when to keep things at a specific spot so it's not seeping into every area of your life. Not that you can communicate with your partner and say, I'm feeling really stressed or I'm feeling really grumpy. You can say that, but learn to manage it so it's not being directed towards them or you're not projecting it. Also have boundaries. You need to have a clear vision of, what do boundaries look like for me and what does it look like when they're being respected and not being respected, so you can communicate that. This is a boundary. Let's say you just start dating somebody and you know that one of your rules is they don't call you past 9 o'clock at night because that's when you're sleeping. That could be a boundary. Then they don't listen to that and they call you every night at 10:30 and wake you up. You can say, my personal rule is I don't take calls past 9. I would love to talk to you. I'm so happy that you want to hear from me, but I need my sleep. Please don't interrupt it. Now you know this is my boundary. It's clear cut. I know when you're passing it. I know when you're not. You always have to know those things so you can communicate them. You also have to know that you can heal. You have to believe it within yourself, because whether you believe you can or can't, you're right. Healing isn't linear. It's not that you start a healing journey and everything's going to be perfect. No, it's going to have up, down, up, down, up, down sometimes. But you have to first believe that it's possible, and you have to believe that you can have a healthy relationship. You have to believe you can be confident and have a healthy mindset. If you believe it, then it's possible. If you don't believe it, it's going to be really hard. So this is the last one. Does this mean I can't date? Maybe you're single and you think, oh, well, I have so much work to do now. I just realized all this stuff. No, you can date. You don't have to be fully healed. And it also doesn't mean you have to break up with your partner or divorce your spouse, of course, until you're perfectly healed. No, you have to choose healing, and you have to choose someone else who chooses their own healing. I'm not perfect at this. I'm the mindset coach, and I'm still not perfect at it. But I work on it all the time. I also have a partner who works on his all the time. You have to decide, I'm not perfect at this, but I'm going to commit myself to it. I'm going to find someone else who's committed to it as well. That's how we have healthy relationships. And then the last one is, if you guys want to learn more, if you're single and you want to work on more of these, psychology things to help you with dating and have better relationships, this group is primarily for single people. I have a couple people in there who are married or in relationships, but really is for single people who need a better mindset around dating. If anybody wants this, I'll put it in the chat. It's a totally free Facebook group. I do live videos in there all the time. I do them actually Monday through Wednesday. So if you are ever interested, then I'll put it in the chat if you want to join. And that is it. That's the end of my presentation.
Alison, thank you so much. Oh my goodness, I was mesmerized with everything you say, and I think there were so many gold nuggets in there. You know, the talk was so, it was simple and it was easier to understand, but I think you hit so many important topics. And I could relate to so many of these things. And one of the things is the baggages. You know, your analogy of putting rocks on your shoulder. So a couple of years ago, I was working with black flower essences because it deals a lot with the emotion. And Dr. Andrew Tresidder, who's one of an amazing GP that we have here in the southwest of England, and he goes, he's actually written a wonderful book. It's actually called "I'm Fine" because, and when you said that, I thought Dr. Tresidder, and it
That's
talks
so
all
perfect.
about that, where people just walk around, they go, "I'm fine" when you're not fine, or we're not fine. And he goes, you don't have a chip on your shoulder, you've got a whole sack of potatoes on your shoulder, he says.
Yes.
It's so true, isn't it? I mean, we have emotional banks where every time something positive happens within our relationship, it goes into the emotional bank, and then when something bad happens, you know, you've got that potato in your sack. And I think it's being able to recognize that and balance that, isn't it? And just so many things you've mentioned are so true, particularly around the areas of anxiety, because I have clients who particularly over COVID are very worried that their family's going to die, you know, very anxious that their parents going to catch COVID or die. Or even before COVID, I had clients who suffered severe anxiety, and they're like, every time the phone calls, I'm scared that that's a phone call from the school to tell me that my son's injured or he's had a car crash or whatever. So can I just ask you, I mean, I followed your presentation, and I understand that we project, and I teach people to do the same. Just imagine the worst case scenario, but sadly the worst case scenario in this case is someone dying. So what is your advice for people who are suffering with these anxieties that relate around death, you know, and or something really morbid?
Yeah, that is always a tough one. I think death is of course, one of the hardest subjects there is, because it feels very final. And so it feels very terrifying in a way other things do not. The first thing that comes to mind for me is, if it were one of my clients or one of my friends, I would actually pull up statistics, because sometimes we need proof of the opposite. Like, we need actual proof. We can work on the mindset all we want and say, that's crazy, that's unrealistic, that won't happen. But for somebody who's really scared, it's going to go in one ear out the other, and they're still going to feel just as terrified. So I know I would actually pull up numbers and find out, well, what are the chances of this actually happening? Because chances are they're very, 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 very low. And when you pull that and you have actual science in front of you that says, yes, I see your fear, but in reality, this is what it is, that can ease a lot of stress as well. And then if for whatever reason that maybe it eases it a little bit, but you're still feeling anxious, figuring out the root of it. The root of it's always the key to it. So why is this fear so strong? What happened to you in your past? Whether it was a family member who died suddenly, or maybe that's not what happened. Maybe it almost happened, or maybe it could be something as crazy as you read a book when you were a child. And in that book, the character's mom got a disease and something happened. It could really be that extreme. And so figuring out where is the root of it, and then working through the root issue first. And once you heal that thing in the past, even if it happened 40 years ago, then dealing with it in the present becomes a lot more simple.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I know. I mean, I think we know about statistics, but it's not something that we suddenly go to, isn't it? Because we get carried away with the feeling and the emotion. And I was, you know, particularly if people are scared, like the plane's going to crash or something, and then the statistics of that happening is just so low compared to getting hit by a bus or dying because a camel fell over you or something crazy. But because we watch movies where planes have dropped off the sky, or you know, or we might be watching the news about the latest plane crash or whatever, and so we tune, we kind of bathe our brain in all these fears, isn't it? What based on what we surround ourselves with, and what we come across.
Yeah, we have to decide where our attention goes. That's really what it comes down to. What do I want to give my energy to? How do I want to feel?
Absolutely. I just want to ask you if anyone in the audience has got any questions at all. Please feel free to unmute and ask questions if you've got any questions for Alison. Just drop it in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question. That'll be great.
Yeah. I do all things mindset, dating, relationships, communication, all that stuff. So if you have any questions specifically about the presentation, maybe something stood out to you and you need a little personal advice on that, how to actually work it in your own situation, I can help with that as well.
Great. I mean, I think every aspect of the presentation was brilliant, particularly around communication, because that's something that we all need to do, isn't it? Even if we're not going on a date, we still have communication with our colleagues and things like that. So, and I think what you mentioned about the trigger is just so true, isn't it? That we bury our emotions and then we just flip when something happens. So, yeah, great. Claire says she loves the presentation. Thanks for tuning in, Claire. Yeah.
Yes, you're welcome. I'm happy this helped.
Great. Well, okay, Danielle says, how would you let go of trauma? Would you use the fake it until you make it? So
No.
say if you've got bereavement or, and obviously we all go through that at some point in our lives when we lose a loved one or a family member.
Yes, I think it depends on the trauma. So in my presentation, I almost use the word trauma loosely because there's big traumas and there's micro traumas. So micro traumas could be just something stressful happened at work. You got embarrassed one day giving a presentation. That's a form of trauma, but it's not totally crazy. That's a micro trauma. Those you can work through on your own most of the time. Bigger traumas, I don't know what yours is specifically, Danielle, but bigger ones, I don't recommend faking it because most of the time that's just suppression and it will come back up. Fake it till you make it's more about confidence and how you feel and try to kind of pump yourself up. But yeah, big trauma, I recommend therapy every time because there's a lot of ways that can play out for the rest of your life if you push it under the rug, because faking it till you make it could just be accidental suppression and you don't want it to be accidentally suppressed. So I would definitely consider therapy for that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think obviously when it comes to abuse of some sort, for example, long-term physical, mental abuse, isn't it? I think it's an area that people probably shouldn't DIY and trying to figure it out themselves and actually get support for that.
Agreed.
Yeah. Great. I mean, is there anything else you'd like to share at all, Alison? Have you got maybe an example of patients or clients that you've worked with where they've had a transformation through coaching?
Oh, yeah, so many. Let me try to think of what one first comes to mind. Well, I have one of my clients who I've been working with for a long time, and she's had a series of relationships that were mentally abusive, and just, I'm sure some of you guys have had something similar. And through working with some of these mindset tools and building her confidence and feeling more worthy, it's not perfect. Things like this, the bigger the trauma, the more time it takes. That's the other thing. You have to be patient. I have some clients who it comes really quickly to because they haven't had a lot of traumas, and they start to, like one of my clients, she is single and she's working on being more confident to go out and date and find her soulmate. And she's practiced these affirmations. And when she starts to feel insecure, she went on a date recently where he wasn't interested and didn't want a second date. She said, I cried for one day, and then the next day I decided to not do that anymore. I always say that, feel your emotions and then choose to move on. So she implemented that. She also implemented things like when she starts feeling insecure about herself, when she starts feeling bad, she starts reminding her things like, I am worthy no matter what. The man of my dreams, I love this one. The man of my dreams is dreaming of me, or the woman of my dreams is dreaming of me. If somebody in your past didn't treat you well, or maybe somebody you're dating now has rejected you, practice saying that in your head, because it will remind your conscious and subconscious mind, the person for me wants me exactly as I am. And now that she's been implementing that and so many of the other things, she has actually had more people asking her out than ever. Even if they're people she hasn't been interested in, she's like, they are so much nicer. They're putting in more effort than anybody has. This is crazy. So, all she's done is the work inside of herself. She doesn't buy a different dress to wear on the date. She doesn't pick a fancier restaurant. All she does is decide, I'm worthy and I'm going to practice being worthy. And she's had, I don't want to say good luck because I don't think it's about luck. I don't believe in luck in most situations. She's really created it for herself. So it's possible.
The law
for
of
you.
attraction, isn't it? I mean, she's created, she's been able to attract different people into her life based on the frequency that she's giving off. Yeah, definitely.
100%.
And you know, a lot of times people can just be attracted to you just for your sense of humor, or do you know what I mean? It could be such simple things, isn't it? And yet so many people worry about the external appearances, what handbag you're wearing, whether it's designer label or not, and all those things, which actually don't really mean a great deal at the end of the day. Great. Cool. Anyway, thank you so much. I really love this training. You know, I'd love to do some more around mindset, and because I just think that's where it all starts. And when it comes to improving your health, whether it's changing your diet, nutrition, it all starts with a mindset, as well as having that belief that you can change, you can reverse your health, you can get better, and even cancer, you can heal yourself of chronic diseases. So I think mindset is just so important when it comes to every single aspect of our life. So I just want to thank you again, Alison, for coming today. And we've got the recording, which means people can benefit from this teaching. And if anyone would like to get hold of Alison, please feel free to do so. And we might see you again sometime in the future. Maybe jump into the Facebook group and do some lives. In the Facebook group.
I would love that.
Yeah,
and I'll message you right after this, the Facebook link. So if anyone else who watches your replay later, if you're emailing it over to anyone, if they want to join, you can send it to them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I can share it with my group. Yeah, great. Okay. Well, look, thanks for your time again. I learned a lot, and I'm definitely sharing with a lot of people. And thanks to Tammy and everybody else, Tammy, Jane, Derek, Danielle, Tina, and Claire, and everyone who has joined this evening. So have a lovely evening. Have a good sleep. It's 10 o'clock in the UK now. Don't stay up too late. Danielle says thank you, and Claire says thank you as well.
You're welcome, everybody.
All right.
You're welcome.
Take care. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Alison.
Bye.
Okay, bye.